Hello, BookTube. This is Alan. Uh, got this video to. I had finished Vaseline Buddha by Jung Moon. This is translated from the Korean by Yewon, and this is available from Deep Ellum Press. Deep Ellum Press is located in Dallas, Texas. They've been in publication for 6 years. They're a nonprofit publishing company, and they specialize in doing translated works from around the world. So they took on this task for Jung Moon, who is a Korean author, and the book was very good. I had just finished it. You can see by all those tabs I put in here. I really enjoyed this one. And let me read you the back part of it, because this back part has something to do with the front. And Jung Moon says, and I am somewhat curious as to what kind of distorted story will result overall when you devote yourself to the details with no thought to overall structure. One of the reasons why I don't write stories with a clear structure or theme is because there's something about such stories in and of themselves which make me shudder with their boredom, and another because just one look at reality will show you how far removed such stories are from our reality, or my own life at least, and how different this truth of our reality is from what's depicted in them. The story starts off with our sleepy narrator who is awakened by the intruder. And the intruder doesn't get into the home, but is outside. And intruder starts to run away, and he's limping. And so Young Moon kind of has this train of conscious thought as to why the intruder is limping. What was the problem? Did he cause it, or did the intruder cause it himself? And it goes on for a couple of pages. And then the narrator continues this conscientious train of thought and more of a geographical mental locations as he goes from there to a park where he meets a woman and a dog, and then he goes to different places around the world: New York City, Germany, France, Budapest, Berlin, and he talks about various things that are seemingly meaningless in everyday life. I'll read you several portions of this. Someone could, while taking a walk near his home, see a sign that says National Boiler Association on the first floor of a building in a residential area he doesn't normally visit, and be touched by it in a strange way, although he would already pass it by without second thought. He could also think that the place, which according to the sign was headquarters to dealers who were probably responsible for household boilers nationwide, looked too small to be the office of the National Boiler Association, but the place home to an association of people whose job it was to make hot water flow from boilers in homes nationwide, and let you take hot showers and sleep in a warm room even in the winter. Could seem any more mysterious than a secret political or religious society. Or you could look at the sign and think that the National Boiler Association could be a social gathering of people who did something that had nothing to do with boilers, or a ghost organization that was involved in something specific, underground world in which his father too lay and imagined being slowly sucked into the world. And Excuse me, I just lost the page there. Or he could come across somewhere in the city. He lived in an office called Teddy Bear Association. But seeing that it was locked, to his disappointment, the place could look shut down already. With only his son remaining, he could stand before the office for a long time and suddenly recalled the touching documentary film by Anders Z. Weisdon, the Polish director on teddy bears. And so it just continues on like that for a while, just looking at a billboard. And he continues on with that stream of conscious thought. And he one part in the story, he talks about he was in Budapest and he sees some false teeth on a bench in snow and starts talking about it. And that goes on for a couple of pages. And it's just meaningless stuff that he always talks about. And he talks about an octopus. And he talks about how he could buy an octopus a little later and spend my remaining hours, the rest of my life, with it and die with the realization that there's no difference whatsoever between the death of the octopus and my own. And I could have realized anew or not anew at all the fact that death is what eliminates the difference between every living being, which isn't anything new, and that everything becomes one before death and extinction. I share my faith with the octopus. And looking at the octopus, I can mutter, that really strange looking green cat looks like a pineapple somehow, and think, but even as a pineapple, it looks somewhat strange. And it's just random thoughts that he had. And he talks about the different, as I mentioned, different countries that he went to. And it reminds me of the Paul Thoreau books, the Kingdom by the Sea, or the Great Railway Bazaar, or Riding the Iron Rooster, where Paul Thoreau has his conscious train of thought and talks about different people in the area where he visits and continues on. And it kind of reminds me of that. And this part here, he talks about going to see the stage for the 100 Years' War. I saw a fortress-like structure in ruins on a hill, which convinced me that a war had indeed taken place there long ago. The landscape that lay before me did, in fact, look like something that two countries would wage war over. I also fancy that England and France went to war because the English couldn't bear to think that the French ate on a daily basis delectable wine and cheese, which they themselves couldn't eat, and wanted to keep the French from doing so, if not for anything else. There must be another reason, of course, for the war, one that was less romantic and lyrical, but I thought that waging a war so as not to let the opponent take possession of such a landscape, so as to take possession of it yourself, was quite reasonable as a reason for waging a war, and the region was famous as a grape and truffle producing district. At any rate, people started many wars for ridiculous reasons and did many ridiculous things even during wars. People of certain periods think it to be advantageous to make spears as long as possible, did make spears as long as possible, and ended up being unable to even pick them up. Italians, flaunting their remarkable fashion sense during the First World War, made red uniforms that became easy targets for enemies, reducing the chance of survival for their own youth. And during the war, it's possible to see anti-aircraft gun in someone's garden, though laundry flapping in the wind. And in fact, it's possible to see such scenes at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack by the Japanese. Perhaps war is a stage that lets people do the most ridiculous things in the easiest ways. And there's a lot of humor involved in this and the story. He adds certain amounts of humor, and he does it in a good job. But it's more of a scrubs the depths of the human psychic and to achieve a higher level of consciousness through his works to let the real and unreal and surreal explore the very nature of reality. And there's a part here where he goes back to talking about what he wrote. And he says that reading what I've written so far, I think about how I should move forward, or to make it move forward about all of his possibles. It is always a pain to read over what you have written. Writing isn't without moments of joy you can't feel in doing anything else. But such moments are much too rare, and the moments vanish as soon as they come. Seem now I'm completely lost in what I've written, and that was part of my intention, of course, so it wouldn't be a bad thing to get completely lost in my own story. But getting lost and wandering in the story makes you more clearly aware of yourself as you're disappearing somewhere in a way that's both similar to but different from getting lost and wandering in the forest or the streets. I feel as if somewhere that doesn't exist, as if I existed somewhere that doesn't exist as a non-existent being, as if I'm disappearing. And he comes back home to Korea and finds out that his goldfish died. So he has to go bury his goldfish, and he goes to the cemetery, he says, where they had buried Christian missionaries that were beheaded trying to convert the native people. So he goes to bury the goldfish, which is the cemetery, which is right next to this river, and buries the goldfish. And the goldfish name happens to be Kierkegaard. And he says in the story that Kierkegaard is also the Danish name for churchyard. So it's very, very ironic that a goldfish named Kierkegaard is buried in a churchyard. and so this is a very good book. This was the Vaseline Buddha by Jung Moon, translated from the Korean by Yewon. I have another one of his that I had finished. See if I can locate it. This is a very short book. It's only about 230 pages. 226 pages. Excuse me. And, Vaseline Buddha. Let's see what the date on it when it came out. Published in copyright 2010. English translation was 2016. So this one is the other one that I showed before. 7 samurais swept away in a river. And this one I have finished. And this was English translation was last year. And it was copyrighted 2018. So this one is talks about all the myths of Texas, the different myths, chili without beans, or talks about the Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald, even though he talks about the 2 dogs left in Jack Ruby's car. This is also a stream of consciousness thought also. So that was it. That's in my review of these 2 books. This one, actually, Vaseline Buddha. And Vaseline Buddha actually explains in the story that it comes from a Buddha that you rub Vaseline on the statue. Well, thank you for watching, and Take care.